Welcome to the Kingdom Business Breakthrough Podcast. We help entrepreneurs gain influence and favor by applying God's kingdom principles in their business and personal life. Welcome your host, Derek Ty.
Hello, and welcome back to the Kingdom Business Breakthrough Podcast. Today, I've got a very special guest, and before I introduce him, I'm just going to let you guys know that we are having a great post-apocalyptic spring here. So after the COVID craziness has been happening, we've been updating you guys a little bit on our business and what things have been going on. So I just want to let you know God's been good. Deals are still coming in on our real estate business, our rental property business, on our other residual streams of income. So I just want to let you guys know as a quick encouragement that God is good. He's faithful. He's good to his people, and he's made a lot of promises in the Bible. We need to declare those promises every day. So before we get started with our interview today, I just want to give you guys a quick update that, here it is in August 26th, I think is today. And this has been kind of one of those summers that I never predicted, but it's out there, and spring, summer was great. So just stay encouraged. And the guest I have today is going to, I think, even further encourage you into an area that we really haven't gone into much on this podcast. So today's guest is Trent Holbert. He's a personal friend of mine. He and his wife have come up and visited us at our log cabin for one of our Keto at the Cabin events. He is a speaker, teacher, coach, pastor. He does epigenetic testing and helping people. He can tell you a lot more about what he does, but he's also written this amazing book, which I just finished, called The Food God. And, I actually did read this book, and I went through all the different scenarios on here. Very, very, very good quality content. So without any further ado, Trent, welcome to the show.
Derek, thanks so much, man. It's really my honor to be on your show. I've kind of been anticipating this time with you because I know we're just going to have a good time. So thanks for having me.
Well, I kind of feel like this is one of those coffee chats. You just get out with a brother in the Lord, and you pop out the coffee or tea, and you just hash it out and enjoy life. And I think iron sharpens iron, and having people like you in my life is really important. So I appreciate your friendship, your professional coaching kind of advice, and you and your wife have been amazing to be kind of watching you and how you're parenting your kids and being outside and living the lifestyle that you lead. So I'm going to get into that here in just a second. But, first thing I want to start with is basically I would like for you to kind of tell the listening audience kind of who you are and kind of a little bit of your journey in a nutshell, and kind of where you kind of came about writing this book.
The book, thanks so much, by the way, for talking about that. Especially thanks for reading it, Derek. I appreciate the fact that you did read it.
It's hard to read books nowadays. I mean, it's
no, I want to listen to everything. If it's not on
Audible, I'm just like, oh man, I really got to do this. But I'm glad I did. I read a lot of it on vacation, where I could kind of just have a little time away. And so I'm glad I did that. It was very, very good.
And it's not a big book. I didn't want to write a huge, big, thick thing. So hopefully it was easy to get through. But the book came out of, my story. I mean, you're going to get a lot of things out of the book that's just, we'll talk about that later, holistic nutrition, theology. But when you jump into the book, you find my story. And I think it's important that people know where I came from and what I went through, because really the core of that is my own experience. And so I was never the fit guy. I was never a healthy guy. I was farm fit because I was raised not too far from you, Derek. I was in northern Kentucky. Mm-hmm. So we were raised to work hard on the farm and be active that way. But we weren't taught how to eat. We weren't taught really how to condition ourselves in a healthy manner, just work hard. But I went into ministry, making a pastor at a very young age. I was 21. Mandy and I had married, and it was the first year of our marriage that I'd gone into full-time ministry as a pastor. And it was a learning curve for me because being so young and green, but I had that work ethic of working, right? And eventually, that's a finite resource, the energy, emotional and physical. And So eventually I burned a candle at both ends and destroyed my health. I mean, absolutely destroyed physically. I was 60 pounds overweight, no energy, had developed an autoimmune disorder, had low back pain, was going to physical therapy, just lots of horrible physical um, issues. And then emotionally, as it took a toll, the bouts of depression and the darkness. And I actually went through that. Went through it for a period of time. That it was. So it was. I guess it's what C.S. Lewis would call the dark night of the soul. I guess I can add that to my repertoire. that I've experienced that. But it was through that God showed me a better way. He took me back to Scripture and showed me. He really kind of reintroduced me to my identity in Him, what
Mm-hmm.
that looked like, and then I began to follow that pathway. And my identity in Christ is what freed me from everything that I was going through. But it also gave me this newfound um, lifestyle that has since then just been a tremendous benefit to my health, both physically, spiritually, and emotionally.
Well,
So
man, I
that's
think I think that's a good way to kind of transition this too. Is a lot of entrepreneurs. So my audience is mainly kingdom entrepreneurs, right? So you're Fit for the Kingdom podcast, which I didn't mention. You have an amazing podcast as well, which I've also been a guest on. I'm grateful for that, and so is my wife Jessica for her holistic health training. But for people that are out there that are on the business side, they're looking for the next business edge. They're, an entrepreneur. Most of our, listening audience are entrepreneurs that are also Christians that are trying to learn how to blend this life together, right? So there's really this missing element that a lot of people know that I've been keto or mostly keto for a few years, some carnivore, some, off the rails at times, especially during COVID here, to be honest with you. So I think your contribution to my audience is really like important because people need to see the spiritual, physical, emotional, mind, body, spirit connection. And I'm more about the business side of things and practical marketing tips and ways to, treat your customers better. Having someone like you on the show that really can kind of show this other side of how we should be living will also deeply benefit them and their businesses. Wouldn't you agree with that?
I would totally agree with that. I just find like as far as my background goes, we can look at a few different hats that I've worn over the years. But as a church planter,
Hmm.
I've planted multiple churches from scratch, and you could look at that as a business, right? Because you
Oh,
still have to
definitely.
develop. Yeah, it
Yeah.
still has a model, it still has strategy, it has vision. You have to hire or train or develop. You have to implement. You have to multiply. When I went into personal training, through this part of my life, I just thought, well, I'm just going to be a personal trainer and help people because really I came through this season and it was kind of like, how do I repay? How do I help other people now? But that turned into a business. And so after I become a personal trainer, my concept was I want to go broad. I want to reach as many people as possible. And so I started Trent Holbert Fitness LLC. So I started my own business, which evolved into the podcast, into the online consulting, coaching, and have started 2 gyms now out of that, and now have the experience. Like I get to live this life, where I get to travel around the world quite a bit, just to it now with COVID has kind of shut that down, but this coming Saturday, I will be teaching in Buenos Aires, Argentina. Um, so God has really opened up those doors. So I feel like, yeah, I could probably speak to your business listeners as well. And I think what I would, because you brought up the podcast Fit for the Kingdom, Jesus said, any man that puts his hand to the plow and looks back is not fit for the kingdom.
Hmm.
So I look at my leadership model. I guess if I distilled it down, would be two things, Derek: sacrifice and hustle. And I
Hmm.
know that sounds like it's very street language, but really Jesus is talking about that. He's talking about take your hand and put it to the plow. There's a great deal of sacrifice to go out and get the work done. You have
Hmm.
to put in the work, and that hustle, there has to be consistency. You can't look back. And so the things that I've got to accomplish over the course of these years that God has blessed, I believe have come out of that, that I've tried to live my life that was fit for the kingdom, that I've put my hand to the thing that God has given me, whether it's planting a church, writing a book, podcast, business, multiplying those things, whatever. Yeah, I'm willing to put my hand to the plow, but I'm going to stay the course and not look back. And I think he's really just blessed that.
I did pick up from your book too that you do understand the concept of rest and you understand toil, and so I believe that if we're co-laboring with God and we've got we basically give him the yoke, right? Like he's taking the heavy burden of our work. When we do these work activities, like you're serving these people, it doesn't probably feel a lot of times like the drudgery, the toil part of work. Like God wants us to work, but he doesn't want us to toil. I think there's a big difference,
Mm.
and a lot of people don't really see that. And I see that in you, like you're doing something you truly love, that you're gifted to do, that you've got experience in, that you've personally had victories in. And when people see that you've achieved victories in your life and you've overcome things, it becomes almost like a passion project for you to take somebody into your wing and say, I've been there, done that. I've seen what you're going through. Let me help you. And if you got a call from me at 9 p.m. one night and said, hey, I'm really struggling with this thing on how do I eat this or should I do that? It wouldn't be work for you. Like, you're not going to go, oh my gosh, I have to deal with this food thing. You're going to be all passionate, like, oh, I've been waiting for Derek to call me about this because now I get to inject my energy into this, right? Do you feel that way about your work?
I consider it overflow.
Yeah.
Like God he just keeps pouring in. He pours in his passion. He pours in these resources and these gifts. And let's not deny the fact that we are people of gifts.
Hmm.
And so I don't want to deny that. But when it's there, you just want to give that out. And so yeah, it's natural. I don't, and it happens all the time. Like people. This morning, I got tagged in a Facebook thing. This guy that I've only met once, but it's something about diet, and he tagged me like if you all can help me on this journey. And I look at that, so to me that's not work, it's just rewarding. I'm actually flattered that people would even think of me to tag me, though, honestly.
I love it. Honestly, it's like I remember when we did these keto at the cabin events, and like the questions, like I'm not a health expert at all. I just try to eat healthy, I do some movement, whatever, but I'm the business guy at these meetings. And people are asking me like, hey, what do you think about this and ClickFunnels and marketing this? And it's like I just kind of come alive because it's something I'm really excited in. Or
Yeah.
real estate, people are like, hey, tell me how the market's going. Should I buy in a 2-family or a 4-family? Should I do this with a retail? What's the future of interest rates? It's like I just kind of naturally pop into that conversation and I love it. Like, it's fun. Like, I even just get energy thinking about it now. So my point, I guess, to the listening audience is, Trent is a guy who does have the entrepreneurial experience. I think church planning is probably the ultimate entrepreneurial experience because you have to do every single job, just like starting a restaurant or anything else. I've read your book. You're sweeping the floors and setting up chairs, and then the place burns down, and you've got all the discouragement and stress and lack, and then you've got abundance and overflow and relationships. Every entrepreneur can relate to all those things in your book. And then now you've got a true entrepreneurial calling on your life where you're taking these experiences that you've had. So I don't want to cut your story short, but basically, to summarize for those of you who haven't read the book yet, you had this, you were way overweight, you were burned out, had lots of dysfunction in your life. Depression, I think, was one of those. And then, so let's talk about some practical lessons learned through that journey that would kind of inspire some people that, because I think of pastors, a lot of pastors are broken down, worn out. They're doing all this ministry work and they aren't feeling very fulfilled. Maybe they don't have the income that they're looking for. They eat crappy. They're always on the run. So, let's just put someone in that situation that's listening to this. It's like, yeah, I'm not in the best physical, mental, spiritual shape right now. Kind of, what are some things that happen along your journey that you think were encouraging to people that we could kind of move them into that area?
For me, like I said, it was going back to finding out what my identity is, and for your listeners. So here's what we need to understand: we're not we are not flesh and blood. We have flesh and blood,
Hmm.
but we're spirit. Our identity is in something that's eternal. It's always going to exist. And so Trent Holbert is not identified by how much I weigh or what my HDL is, my cholesterol levels. And it's not, my identity is not in my income. It's not in my external successes, but my identity, who I am, like the most fundamental, I am a spirit that's going to be forever. Who I am in Christ matters because that gives me purpose. Now, it doesn't matter if you're a pastor or a real estate agent, you're a thriving business leader, you have a purpose. God has given you a purpose. In Christ, you were created with a purpose. But how are you going to carry that purpose out? Well, you need flesh and blood. You got to have flesh and blood to do it. You have to be able to physically maneuver yourself through the world to do the things that you do. If you're gonna sell houses, you have to be able to talk to people with clarity and cognition and a pretty focused mind. If you're gonna wheel deals and construct business systems or plant a church and minister to people, you're going to have to physically be capable of carrying out those things. I wasn't, and that struck me pretty hard. It was sobering. That's what God really showed me, that if you really want to carry out the purpose that I've given you for the identity of who you are in me, you're going to have to go at this at a holistic perspective. Yes, you're going to have to look at your physical needs. You're going to have to be able to get in shape physically. You're gonna have to develop some mindset. You in this depressive state, you can't serve me. You can't fulfill that purpose. So you're gonna have to come to terms with some truths. You've believed some lies. Now we gotta calibrate to the truth. And spiritually, you're gonna have to find your rest. And I'm glad that you brought up the subject of rest, because the problem that I found was that I wasn't resting, not physically, but I wasn't resting spiritually either.
Hmm.
And so God had to show me what it was to really rest in Him. That was the spiritual component, aside from finding my identity. When I let that stuff out, when I began to give that away to people and show them that it's all connected, you can't be spiritually optimized. You can't be where you need to be spiritually without that connected to your physical health. You can't do it. Um, and vice versa. People began to see a new way of looking at their lives. And so I've gotten a lot of great feedback that people have come back and said, I've started working on my diet, but then I began to feel good and my depression begins to go away, or my relationship with my family begins to become better because I'm no longer moody, because I don't hurt anymore, those
Hmm.
types of things. And so it's just been a real eye opener. It's what has been a catalyst for me in this industry. But I think it's been the biggest thing for people to see that these three things are connected, and that's the way God intended, at least while we're on this earth. The
Well,
truth of the matter is we're gonna be in these bodies until we die, so we might as well, we're gonna be connected to them.
well, I think it's even like, as an entrepreneur, I want to present myself in the best possible way. I mean, one analogy I think about is like a race car driver. I mean, I could be the best race car driver ever, but if I didn't have a pit crew that took care of the vehicle, I had to drive around the racetrack, and they're like, "Oh, we're not going to do the oil change this time. We're not going to change those tires. We're not going to, do the preventative maintenance to make sure the shocks are right for next week's race. I think last week's race, it was pretty rough on the car, but let's just give it another week and see what happens." That
Hmm.
race car driver would go out there the next Sunday to race, and the car would fall apart in the first 3 laps, right? But
Hmm.
yeah, we do that to our bodies all the time. We're like, well, yes, I need to be this. I'm going to present a listing presentation on Monday, and I've got a sales call on Tuesday, and I'm going to try to recruit a new agent on Thursday. But I didn't do anything that week to prepare my body. Like, did I eat the right foods? Did I think the right thoughts? Did I meditate? Did I go through and read some scripture? Did I have a conversation with God about what my week was supposed to look like? Did I do all those preventative things for when I actually have to go into action for my business and do what I'm called to do? If I haven't done those things ahead of time, prepare myself, then basically I'm going to be running on empty, And I feel like when I read your book, that resonated with me is, you were trying to do all these things in the church planning, and you've got these emotional issues you were dealing with the past hurt and all these kind of things, but until you got your body into a place where you could physically perform the duties, And even as a husband, I mean, I want my wife to see me as an attractive person. Do I have to have a six pack like you? Maybe not, but I'm on my way. You know, I've always been on my way for like 40 some years now. But I'd love to have a six pack, right? And I'm probably 5 to 6 pounds of fat away from it, but I could probably do it if I really focused, right? Could I run a marathon? Maybe. Do I want to? No. But like the point is like there are things physically that I can do that are going to enhance my work relationships, my family relationships with my kids, my relationship with my wife. I want to be as attractive. I mean, I was at a hospital yesterday with my daughter. She's doing a checkup, and there was this young doctor, and he was like the model of health, right? He's like 6'2", big shoulders, thin waist. He had the tight shirt on with the like bulging muscles, and he looked like probably like a some kind of Ivy League football player is kind of what I kind of best way to describe this guy. And he's standing there doing his little medical reports. And I'm like, I would probably take advice from that guy. Like when I look at that guy, I'm like, man, he's that model of health. And then you might look at another doctor who's 100 pounds overweight, that sloppy appearance, sloppy, like you can tell their skin isn't great, the hair is not great, teeth, nails. Like you can just look at somebody and go, that person is not healthy. Would I want to take advice from that person? And I think in our businesses, people look at, they want to be led, right? They want to have leaders. And that's one reason why I feel like you can really help enable this entrepreneurial generation that I'm trying to reach to be the best that we can be, to do what God's called us to do. And I think that's really what your podcast is all about as well.
Yeah, it's definitely, I want people to be optimized. I know that word gets thrown around a lot today, but I want to level up. I want people to be able to do what God has called them to do, and to do it in a fashion that's efficient and successful. And let's be honest, let's give a scenario. If you are a 40-plus-year-old business leader that's passionate about your business, and you're putting in long hours to make sure that it's successful, you're on the road a lot, and you're probably eating subpar quality food. Maybe you're a drive-through guy. Let's put that together. All right. So you're not getting much exercise, and weight is being put on because you're sedative most of the day at your desk or in your car. You're eating crappy food, and so you're destroying really the hormone profile of your body. Your hormones are off. And when I say hormones, we could talk about neurotransmitters. Dopamine, serotonin, melatonin, oxytocin. These things that give us a good mood. That gets thrown off by gut dysbiosis because of the crappy food that we're eating. We're over 40, we're not working out, we're not eating right, so our testosterone is tanking, which means that our sex life is probably hitting an all-time low. We say, well, that does that just affect me? No, that actually affects my wife too. I kind of use this scenario in the book because now you no longer have the libido from the lifestyle that you're living, but your wife thinks it's her fault. You're ashamed or embarrassed. You don't want to talk to her about it, but now she feels like you're closed off, and she's taking on the guilt and the shame and the regret on herself, thinking that you're no longer attracted to her. So now your marriage is starting to tank. So when we take a panoramic look, now we see all of a sudden, before we know it, we have a bad marriage, that we've lost the romance. We have lethargy and lack of energy to even do the job that we're wanting to do because of that lifestyle. And so now our managers and supervisors are calling us in and raking us over the coals for our lack of performance or numbers or what have you. And so all of a sudden we look back and everything has just gone to heck, and it's like, what happened? But we can reverse that. Because if we did begin to lose the weight, start exercising to increase the testosterone, start eating right, to heal the gut and think more clearly and properly and have more cognitive energy, we would be able then to perform in bed and please our wives. When mom is happy, everybody's happy.
Yeah, exactly.
To be present with our family and friends, to not have the worry, to not have the anxiety from the job pressures. We're now rocking it, right? Like we have the energy, the mental energy, the emotional energy, and the physical energy to rock whatever it is that we're doing. And it all went back to physical health. And we can talk about physical health as being a matter of vanity. Maybe for some it is, but that's not the way God created it. God created physical health so that we would be able to be present in this world with His purpose. And so I
No,
would love for people to get that, like our listeners, to say, you know what, he's right. I could actually do a better job at my job if I worked out a few times this week. I could do a better job at my job if I got better rest, quality rest, or ate better. So start to seeing it from that physical aspect. It's not vanity at all.
well, I think a lot of people too, because of COVID, we're right kind of coming out of this, hopefully right now, the worst of COVID, and the death numbers are going down every day and the infections are going back down and all that. And, I think a lot of people have been in hibernation mode. They haven't had to, they didn't go out to the pools this summer. They didn't go out to the vacations. They didn't have to become bikini ready or swimsuit ready or whatever. So normally we have a cycle in the Midwest, right? We kind of like put on a little weight in the winter, and then we come out of it in the spring, and then we want to get our beach bodies on for a couple months, and then maybe back late fall we're kind of in that cycle again. It's Halloween, Halloween candy, Thanksgiving, Christmas, and then we'll get to our diet again on January 1st. So I see a lot of people in the Midwest in this cycle every year, and you probably have seen it too. So the problem is that our cycle got disrupted. So there was no like summer need to be out there without a shirt on, to be, swimsuit ready. A lot of people I know, they're kind of like, well, this year I'm just not going to worry about it as much, So what happens is that cycle suspended can then just become further down the road. Like, okay, now next year I'm not going to worry about it at all. So I'm also kind of shake people up a little bit here. Like, the physical appearance doesn't matter to God, but I do believe it matters it's like a reflection of what's going on inside of you a lot of times. And kind of like it's an outward indicator of maybe what's happening on the inside. And not everybody that's overweight is unhealthy, and not everybody that's skinny is healthy either. So I understand that those are not always exactly in correlation, but there are some correlations, right? So let's talk a little bit about, since we could go on for 4 hours with this discussion, but let's talk a little bit for some practical ways. If someone's listening to this and they're like, yeah, I'm convicted, I know I need to do this. We don't want to condemn anyone. We don't want anyone to feel condemnation of like, you're a bad person. Everyone's got some kind of thing they're dealing with in their life. So let's talk about the transition between, okay, I'm aware now that I need to be in a little bit better place. Let's talk about some things that people can do, emotionally, spiritually, physically, diet, health, etc. Just give us some practical things we can start on.
Yeah, I try to keep this as simple as possible. And I remember getting started and being overwhelmed. How am I going to lose all of this weight? How am I going to get to this point that I actually feel healthy? And I try to keep it as simple as possible. Here's what I have for you, Derek, for your listeners. If you were to take the low-hanging fruit, what would that be? For most people, if you want to lose 5 pounds this week, I'm not making a prediction. I'm just saying, cut the calories out of your drinks.
Yeah.
People have no idea how much they're overshooting their caloric intake by what they're drinking. I just remember doing that. Like, that was the first thing I did. I just cut out all sugary drinks. That meant fruit juice as well. Anything that was a calorie. So I just would drink water. And yeah, I would put the little powder packets in that give it some flavor, but still no calories. Water, green tea, coffee, things like that, and those powdery drinks. And what I'm telling you is not perfect. It's just, what is the low-hanging fruit?
Sure. That's a starting place. Yeah.
That's a starting place. You could easily do that. I do this today. It still doesn't matter to me how fit, or I'm still going to do this. But when I go to the grocery store or the box store with a huge parking lot, I do not fight for a parking spot. I park away. I walk the distance. It just gives me some extra movement throughout the day. So I would say just any way that you can get a little bit of extra movement throughout your day. That might be foregoing the elevator to take the stairs. Just little things like that. We would be surprised. It's called non-exercise thermogenic or thermogenesis. Non-exercise. Let's see what that is. It's neat. Yeah, it's something like a non-exercise thermogenesis, whatever. It just means that you're not bench pressing, you're not squatting, you're just taking the stairs. And so that activity just builds up You can lose weight that way. And then
Now, go ahead.
well, I was just going to say, and then when it comes to food, I think that's people's biggest issue. Really, how do I shop? If you can name all the ingredients, you're better than the majority of every other person in America that eats. So just try to eat as whole as your wallet will let you. It's not always the cheapest, but you know what? Canned chicken is still better than chicken nuggets because it's just chicken. There's no other things added to it. So just try to
Sure.
eat as whole and healthy as possible. That would be the three things, just the lowest hanging fruit that I think is going to provide the biggest return on that investment.
So if somebody starts, and I definitely echo your things. I mean, probably one of the best weight kind of maintenance things I've ever seen is just the drinks. Like if you're drinking enough water every day, you're probably not going to be drinking all the sugary drinks and all that because you just don't have room.
Yeah.
Most people just can't drink that much, right? So if you're drinking, let's say 8 ounce glasses of water a day, you're probably not slamming, Cokes and sugary drinks and energy drinks and even extra sugar coffee. I mean, I think coffee to a lot of people is not what coffee is to me, but I mean, coffee to me is either black coffee or every now and then I'm going to have like a little bit of half and half or cream in there just because I like the consistency of it a little better, but it's not 70 packs of sugar.
Yeah. Well, and two, people have a hard time getting off of the soda, and I get that. Like the carbonation there's something to having that carbonated drink. So I drink San Pellegrino and LaCroix,
Okay.
the Zevia drinks. I find the sparkling waters and things like that, and it's still a 0 calorie. It's refreshing, but I'm getting that carbonation.
And you kind of have that, like, sometimes you're like, oh, I just need something, it's like you get like in your brain, you're just like, oh, I want something salty and sweet. I think the Zevia is a great solution. My kids, none of them drink soda anymore. And we have 5 kids, and I think my oldest one might, because he's 19 now, or almost 19, he's going to do whatever he wants to do. But the other kids that are at home that are primarily, going off of what we got in the pantry, they all drink Zevias or they just drink water. I mean,
Yeah.
and then when the kids came over for a birthday party this weekend, they're like, what do we have to drink? And my kids are like, milk, water. And well, we probably don't even have any milk, but water. And oh yeah, we got some Zevias. And then we had this graduation party this summer. We had some leftover sodas. We bought like 12 packs of, Dr. Pepper or whatever the normal drinks other people drink. And they've been in there this entire summer. Like no one
Mm,
drank them. Like I was kind of surprised. I thought, well, my kids will just be like, oh, I'll drink one because it's here. They just never drank them.
that's
So anyway,
awesome.
that's
Good for
kind of
them.
like for me and my wife, we just don't really drink that stuff either. But then let's talk a little bit about, like we talked a little bit about keto and carnivore and all these different kind of lifestyle kind of methods. I know for you, intermittent fasting and keto was a big transformation. So if someone wants to level up from drinking more water and eating whole foods, what's the kind of the next level up that they could do?
I'm not telling everybody that they need to go keto. I went
Mhm.
keto because I've got autoimmune disorder and I had high insulin resistance. So
Mhm.
this metabolic issue, and I needed the time to heal my body. And so 7 years or 8 years of keto has done a great job. I enjoy it. I love it. But let me put it to you this way. And I'm now reading people's or their genetics. I'm reading their DNA. So I know what people's bodies genetically say across the board, the kind of diet that they're looking for, or that their body responds to. It's not a 0 carb diet. Like carbohydrates it's not evil, but they have their place. And so the next low hanging fruit really to optimize would be to limit your carbohydrates.
Mhm.
Limit, or let me put it to you this way, exclude simple carbohydrates as much as possible. So 0 sugar, like zero, there is no such thing as white granulated sugar. It doesn't exist in my world. It's a drug. Okay. It's out there with heroin. I won't even, it's an essential. It's like, this is not going to be here. But I would even limit, your candies and snacks, but I would even limit your white bread, your white rice, your starchy potatoes. Begin to limit those more simple carbs, or eradicate them altogether if you need to, but hold on to the more complex carbs and limit them. So your oats, grains, barleys, your sweet potato, I still like those. They're one of my favorites.
Mm-hmm.
And broccoli. So all your vegetables, keep those in there, but try to go for the more complex carbohydrate, which means that it's more slowly broken down into the bloodstream as blood glucose, and it won't spike your insulin as quickly. So if I've got, I mean, this is kind of silly, but if I've got the option between an apple and a banana, I'll choose the apple just because it has more fiber, and
Mm-hmm.
so it's actually going to slow down the blood glucose rise. If you could do that, I don't care who you are on this planet, if you could limit your carbohydrate intake, you're going to lose weight and feel better.
And I think that's the thing is, I think some people, I've read one thing in the end of your book talking about, it was in the frequently asked questions about, there are some people, I don't remember the term, but they're like, they get obsessive about calorie counting, they get obsessive about fat grams and intake of protein, and it becomes like its own like religion of like, pharisaical religion, if and it's in a food obsession, like it turns from one thing of not checking it at all to absolutely obsessed. And I think what we're talking about to people out there is that there is this kind of middle ground where you can be aware of what you're eating, which we didn't get into that in your book, but you did a great job at the beginning of your book talking about being aware of sitting down, having a conversation with other people, having the TV turned off, and thanking God for your food, blessing your food, and then actually, preparing it, cooking it, shopping for it. The whole point of digestion, or the whole process of digestion, starts with maybe shopping for the food, then preparing the food, then blessing the food, then actually sitting down and enjoying it with other people and chewing up your food and actually thinking about it, appreciating it for what it is, and then sitting in and letting it digest. Some of it you didn't go into a lot of detail in your book, but I've heard you talk about this before. And then the keto circles of people that we're in, they talk about digestion. But how important that is, and when you become really aware of what you're eating, you're not going to eat a bunch of junk as much, because a lot of people just mindlessly eat or drink. Like they've got the Coke and they've got the bag of chips or ice cream, and they're just sitting in front of TV and then mindlessly, literally just shoving it into their mouth. If you're actually looking at your food, smelling it, like I like red wine. Okay, so instead of I don't drink a lot of it, but when I drink it, I smell it, I swirl it around, I sip a little bit on my tongue, and I like to know, okay, where did this come from? Do I have these kind of hints of herb, or is it a fruit thing, or is it an earthy thing? But it's kind of like I appreciate it, like I think about it. It's not just something that I get drunk off of, right? I think food is a drunkenness as well. People have and you talked about this in your book, the gluttony. Like most pastors don't talk about that as a sin. They talk about everything else that you can sin through in the world, but they don't talk about gluttonous eating. And you made a point to that at the beginning of your book as well.
Yes. Derek, nobody talks about gluttony. Come on.
I know.
No pastor talks about gluttony. I put a target on my back when I did that, didn't I?
Yeah. Well, I think it's great because I think I might have told you this right before you wrote the book, that I was watching a Believer's Voice of Victory, or I listened to their podcast, and for 2 weeks they had basically a health kind of seminar on the podcast for 2 weeks. That's every episode. That's 10 episodes. And basically Kenneth Copeland called people out and he said, listen, I get these people come to my altar, or the altar of God, but he's there, and they say, hey, heal me, heal me, heal me. And then God will heal you right now. And then you turn around, you go to McDonald's literally that same day, and you start the diabetes process all over again. You start all the symptoms people have, hypertension and heart disease and all the cancers and everything else. It's like going right back to the feeding trough of the pig. And so he made a point in this podcast. He said, listen, God can heal you every single time you come to the altar. That's not a problem. But what you're doing to yourself is you're basically injuring yourself over and over and over again. And so he had this expert on there, it was pretty much a keto expert. And he said, this is a way that you could transform the way you're eating. And then we don't need to keep healing you every Sunday. How do you feel about that?
Well, I think it's amazing. I think God has given, for one thing, he's already given the human body most, if not all, of what it needs to heal itself. Now, I understand from the curse of sin on the world that we're still going to degenerate, we're going to disease, and we're going to die. But we can't deny the fact that our body is engineered and designed to heal itself, to function a certain way. It's autonomic. I don't sit here during the day and think about my hormones. They just do what they're supposed to do. My endocrine system does what it's supposed to do. My heart beats and I don't have to force it to do that. And at the same time that it has the ability to respond to a healthy lifestyle. What we're doing essentially is living an unhealthy lifestyle and asking God, let me put it to you that let's make it a harder statement. We're living in sin and asking God to bless it.
Mm-hmm.
So we're living a lifestyle of gluttony, like you said, which is a sin. It's on the same nail as drunkenness because it's a self-control issue and it's a lack of sobriety issue. We're exercising the sin of gluttony. We're exercising what I would contend to be the sin of stewardship of the body, the temple, which Hosea got reamed over for the people through Hosea, not taking care of the temple. But here we are, the temple now of the Holy Spirit, not taking care of it, and we're asking God to bless it. And I think God does want to bless it. He is a healer. But we need to do what he's given us to do. That might be to go see a doctor and have our A1C run. It might be to take some herbs, some supplementation. It might be to change our diet. But there is some responsibility that we have. And we can't just simply go and ask God to heal us and expect that it's going to come in the form of, just a response, and God may choose to do that. I don't want to steal that away. I mean, God, he very well may just want to, in that moment, just heal that person with that divine healing. But let's what you and I are talking about, I think, is the more common case. We would be healed. Like type 2 diabetes, God heal me of my type 2 diabetes. God says, all right, if you would stop eating the way that you eat and exercise, it is reversible. Okay, you don't need a sign. You don't need the parting of the clouds. Just do for your body what I designed it to do, and
Exactly.
it'll take care of the rest.
Well, I think that's really important too for people to hear because, I just kind of had a little thought come into my head about, people will pray at the altar, God, take this desire of drugs away from me, take this desire of drinking away from me, and then they never have a drink again, or I think a lot of people don't think about the eating part. Like, God,
Mhm.
take the desire away from me to overeat, to overindulge on sweets, to overindulge on drinks, to whatever my addiction to three, lattes a day at Starbucks, whatever their food related kind of sin is, which we hate to like label it that way, but it really is. Like anytime you're not being a good steward of resources that God's given you. I mean, I kind of feel like you're really kind of getting into that territory of like, are we in obedience to God for what He
Right.
wants for us in our life? So we've kind of talked through different things, and we're wrapping up. So I want to kind of go into level 3. So one is we talked about here's some practical tips, water, and taking away sugar, things like that. Then we talked a little bit more about whole foods. Then we talked a little bit more about digestion and eating, and then moving. So let's go into like the level 3. Like, okay, so I know you do genetic testing. Let's talk about like if somebody really wants to push this and say, you know what, I want a radical transformation. I've already done step 1 or 2, or hey, I'm ready to go all the way to step 3. What's kind of like that next level for somebody if they really want to
Mhm.
become really aware of what they need and really dial in? Like, what's that next level of fit and nutrition?
Yeah, it's what I believe is to be the future of health, Derek, and it's DNA. We have sequenced human DNA. That has been done. We're now at a level of science and medical science that we're able to utilize that. And it's a gift that God's given us because as a trainer, I'm always guessing. When I'm as a personal trainer, as a nutrition coach, I'll put someone on a program, but we're going to have to wait a couple of weeks to see how they respond to the things that I've programmed them. But doctors are the same way. I actually work with a doctor, a colleague of mine, Dr. Gus Vickery, because he and I are in this together, and he would say the same thing, that even doctors, a doctor will take blood samples to send to the lab to try to figure out, right? I mean, some things are obvious, but a lot of what we're doing is guesswork testing and trying to figure out how we respond. So epigenetics coaching is where we are today. I'm extremely thrilled and fascinated by this because it takes the guesswork out. If you want to know exactly based on your DNA, this is not based on a fad diet. It's not based on what other people think um, or where we are as a society. It is based on your specific genetic makeup that you were born with and that you will forever have. We now have the opportunity to see what specific diet, what are your macro ratios, right? Like what percentage of fat, protein, and carbohydrates do you need to be optimized? Not only how much fat, but how much of what type of fat. Like we can tell from your DNA if you need more saturated or less saturated fat or more polyunsaturated fat. Like we can break that down. Then we
Well,
can get it.
before you keep going, it really reminds me of something. I want people to think about this for a minute. I heard an analogy once where someone said that they couldn't see very well. They went into the eye doctor, and the eye doctor said, "Here's a pair of glasses. Here, I need $100," and they kicked them out the door. And I think that's what a lot of diet and nutrition advice is. It's like, "Hey, I'm overweight. Hey, I'm doing this. Hey, I got all these problems." And they say, "Go on the keto diet. Go on the starvation diet. Go whatever the diet of the day on
Mhm.
the Vogue magazine is." And then they walk out the door. That's pretty much. And then I heard a great line. You can use this. It says, "Prescription without diagnosis is malpractice."
That's good.
So people are
Well,
prescribing things for people without actually doing the diagnosis first, and that's
yeah,
malpractice. So like the keto isn't a lifestyle, isn't a one size fits all.
that's
Either
right.
is intermittent fasting, either is. So I just wanted to interrupt you because I think a lot of people hear what you're saying and they go, "Yeah, that kind of makes sense." But I want people to think of it in another, like if you needed eye surgery, but they didn't know if you were short sighted or nearsighted, or if you had cataracts, or if you had a focal point that wasn't working, or you know for them to give one blanket surgery or one blanket set of glasses for everybody would be malpractice. So
Mhm.
prescription without diagnosis is malpractice. So I use that in my
That's
real estate
that's
business.
good. That's good. But I'm able now to look into someone's genetics. And for instance, I've got a client that I'm going through his genetics, and based on specific genes, because we're able to look at these genes and
Mhm.
look at the allele, the coding for that said gene, to determine its expression. And his genes would say that he is optimized at a 45% um, carbohydrate diet. That's crazy. I
Wow.
mean,
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And actually, he coded for a 25% protein.
Hmm.
Um, how many people in today's health and nutrition industry or climate would tell you, unless you're a vegan or a vegetarian, to go higher carb, 45% and 25% protein?
Nobody.
Because that's not what's being pushed.
Mhm.
Well, let's set that aside and just let the DNA determine what should be pushed. So we've got his diet. I mean, I've got him, he's down. I mean, he is dialed in specifically, not only macronutrients, but micronutrients. Um, as far as his vitamins and minerals, your DNA is going to share with me exactly what your needs are and how your body breaks them down, absorbs, or if they do that very well. Detoxification. A lot of weight gain is due to your body's inability to detox. These
Mhm.
toxins that we live in daily, whether it's airborne or skin contact. Yeah, your DNA is going to determine what your detoxification pathways look like, all the way down to your hormone profile, your sleep onset. How much should you be sleeping? How well? How quickly should you get to sleep? Okay, that's important. Um, it's going to share information, about your testosterone and your estrogens and your ability to convert estrogens and clear them, all the way down into physical fitness. And most people are really excited about that because it's going to share, what is your VO2 max, your overall, your cardiovascular or muscular VO2 max? What is your predisposition to muscle type? So are you a power sprinter, or are you an endurance athlete? What is your predisposition to soft tissue damage, or bone hardening? So for instance, my wife, her family, on her grandmother, her maternal side, is full of osteoporosis. Well, we worry about my wife. Is that something that she's going to have to be concerned about? So, we ran her DNA, and thankfully she's not a carrier of that gene that would predispose her to osteoporosis.
Wow, that's interesting.
Yep. So there's just so much exciting things that's found that we don't have to guess anymore. We can just look into our DNA, and the great thing about the science of epigenetics is that if there is a gene that has a SNP, a single nucleotide polymorphism, it's a variation of that gene that expresses itself in a negative way. We can actually, through environment, through supplementation, through diet, through different things, we can change the expression of that gene, and that is what is epigenetics. So we're able to do that. So here's my job. My job is no longer to just say, okay, we were going to get 5 or 10 or 15 pounds of fat off of you. My job now is to say, well, let's look at your DNA and let your DNA tell me how to get that 5 or 15 pounds off of you.
Well, I'm going to be a customer. I got to do that because I know I live around the Midwest. I've gone through the cycles. I got my wife who's an excellent nutritionist, but she doesn't have access to the DNA reports. I think it'd be great for me to do this. So if someone like me wants to, hire you to read our DNA and give us some recommendations, what's the next step on that?
All you would have to do is contact me via email at trentholbert@gmail.com. I have a steady stream of kits. I work through a company called Apeiron, Center of Human Performance. And so I just make sure that I've got plenty of kits on hand, and we can receive payment easily, electronically, and then I'll ship you with the tracking your kit. You'll receive it. It takes literally 10 seconds to do it. I mean, it's just a simple swab of the inner cheek, and then mail that out in the pre-packaged, the pre-addressed mailing kit, and that's it. That package is going to be shipped off to the labs. It's going to be worked up. When it's finished, I'll get the raw data and translate that, put that into an 80-page coaching report. So basically, what I will get looks like the Matrix. It's just line after line after line of genes and their codes. But that's going to be put into a document that you're going to have for the rest of your life that is 80 pages worth of your genes, your risk assessments, your coaching cues. So
That's
kind of
pretty
everything
cool,
that
man.
you're going to look for. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I'm gonna sign up for that because I think that's a pretty cool service. I think that's the key. That for me, I've probably been guessing a little bit on macros a long time, and I should really dial that in. I want to get that 6-pack here. Just because it's fun, it's like a goal, just like anything else, right?
Right.
It'll be fun. Let's see if we can make that happen. Well, I know we got to wrap up for today, but if someone wants to get a hold of you, so on some of the free advice, they can go and watch your. You got a ton of podcasts for free out there on Apple, iTunes, and Stitcher, and everything else. That's Fit for the Kingdom podcast, and you have a website as well.
You can get most, if not all, of my content too, just by going to www.trentholbertfitness.com. The podcasts are there. My services are there. So if you need to get in touch with me, you can even contact me through the website, whether it's for genetic coaching, nutrition, exercise, spiritual guidance. The whole holistic model is there on the website, and you can just go there and check that out.
That's awesome, man. Well, I'm definitely I'm going to sign up for this. This sounds pretty awesome to me. I heard a little bit about it at our retreat 6 months ago, but I've been thinking a lot about it over the last 6 months, and I wanted to kind of really think about it. But now I think this seems like the best way to make that happen. Well, I really appreciate you being on the podcast today. And is there anything else I should have asked you, or anything else we need to tell the listeners before we wrap up?
Derek, I've just enjoyed my time with you. I appreciate the support and effort that you've made to continue to get my work out there. I'm excited about what you're doing. So, no, I mean, I just appreciate the time, and I think let's just you and I continue to work together, and because we're really working for the same boss and the same kingdom.
Well, we both have things we're good at. Might as well, that's the thing about the kingdom is not one part is greater than the other. We all have, different things that God's gifted us with. So we might as well, use those talents. Oh,
That's
the
right.
book too. So how does everybody get a copy of your book?
Yeah, okay, great. Thanks for asking. You can still go to the website. You can click there. You'll find the book on the website. But it's going to take you to Amazon, so you can cut the middleman out and go straight to Amazon and check out The Food God right there.
Awesome. Well, I really appreciate your time today, and let's stay in touch. And obviously, I'm gonna get started on some DNA testing here too.
All right.
All right. We'll see you soon, man. God bless
Thanks,
you.
man.
Thanks.
Thanks for listening to the Kingdom Business Breakthrough Podcast. For more resources to help you grow as a kingdom entrepreneur, go to kingdombusinessbreakthrough.com. If this podcast has impacted you, be sure to subscribe and share with a friend.
To come, the Savior, Redeemer, the Father, the Son, 'cause the Spirit is on me, a fire within, Creator, sustain.